What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. This week, I'm super excited to have the privilege and opportunity to interview Lindsay Bryan-Podvin of Mind, Money, Balance. She is a financial therapist. If you're not familiar with what financial therapy is, she has a video going over all the information you need to know about that. She is really great at helping us navigate the emotions that can come up around managing our finances. For this interview, I thought it'd be really interesting to ask you all to share more information about your experiences around money, some emotions you have around money as a therapist, and maybe even running a private practice, and present some of that information to Lindsay to see what she thinks about it and for her to also directly answer some of your concerns and questions. You're getting to watch one part with me here where we address some of the therapist-specific questions, and on Lindsay's channel, she addresses some of the more applicable to everyone type questions around emotions and money. So I hope you enjoy watching this portion of the interview where Lindsay and I explore how emotions affect our financial health as therapists.
Well, let's dive into it. I'm super glad that you're here. So I think some of the data we got is really interesting from our various audiences. Should we just hop into the first question that we
got? Let's do it.
And this question was specifically directed towards therapists. And the question is, did grad school teach you about money? So hopefully, even if, mom, dad, caregiver didn't teach us, school didn't teach us as a kid, hopefully grad school got that covered for us. Out of 61 people who responded in my audience to this question, 3 said that grad school taught them about money, and everyone else, 58 people, or 95% of people, said that it did not. So that's great.
Yeah, super bummer.
Lindsay, what about your audience? Let's see if you got anything better.
Nope. This is where our data sets were strangely similar when we asked therapists, hey, did your grad school teach you about money? My audience said, nope. 97% of them said, no, my grad school did not teach me about money. And only 3% said, yes, my grad school taught me about money. And much like you, Marie, my grad school did not teach me about money. I got the message explicitly and implicitly in my grad program that you didn't choose this field because you cared about money. You didn't choose this field because money is important to you. You know that you're going to have student loan debt for the rest of your life. There are a lot of these kind of self-depreciating jokes about how poorly we would be paid. So we heard a lot of that, but we didn't get any nuts and bolts of make sure you opt into your retirement account or make sure you save money for a rainy day. None of that.
You touched on something, and that's part of what's so wild to me is that you're part of a school that's clearly racking up debt for most people, and a lot of debt with a lot of zeros at the end, but also we don't make enough to pay off our school debt. So can we at least talk about that? It's wild to just think about those two things kind of juxtaposed together.
No, and we're really told to just accept it. We're just told that is the way that it is. It's reinforced time and time again that mental health care providers should not expect to make a good living.
Yeah. Wow. I think I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself because we might hear this question pop up, but I'm just wondering if you have any tidbits as a field. Is there a solution to this issue of not just financial literacy as therapists, but we have a lot of debt and often we don't make a lot of money. So
what do we do? Aside from, how do we fix the broken healthcare system, Marie? Yeah. Let me tell you.
Can you fix it?
Easy. Yeah. Easy. No, I think the reality is that we have, much like when we talk to our clients about things that are both individual and systemic, you lovingly guide your clients on the things that they have the control over, and you guide them to take advocacy and action in the areas that they don't have full control over. So for me, I often am incorporating with my clients, making sure you know who you're voting for and making sure that you read through those ballots and making sure that you're understanding who's elected to everything from city council to governor. And then also making sure that if you have additional monies, you're putting it towards charities, foundations, and organizations that feel really good to you, phone banking, that can feel really good. And so kind of the same advice is what I would give other people in our field, Marie. I'd say, what are the things that you can do personally? If you're self-employed like you and I are, making sure your rates are sustainable, making sure that you're able to be profitable. I know that's a dirty word for a lot of therapists, but we can't serve our clients if we're not able to pay our own bills and make sure that and make sure that the business is running smoothly. So on the individual level, what are the things that we can do? And then on a broader scale, what are the areas where it makes sense for you to safely take action in alignment with your values that will help move the needle?
I put you in an unfair position because it's a systemic issue.
Yeah, of course.
There's all these layers to how it's a systemic issue. So yes, you can't fix it just and with one little piece of advice for everyone. We have another question that was directed towards therapists specifically. And the question is, did your peers or supervisors talk openly about money? So we're moving on from the grad program and saying, okay, did your classmates or your supervisors talk openly about money? So from my audience, people who said yes to the question, did your peers or supervisors talk openly about money, was 32%. So that means 67% said that they didn't, but there's at least some conversation happening. What about you, Lindsay? What kind of responses did you get from your audience?
Yeah, so my audience, when I asked the same question, did your peers or supervisors talk openly about money? 11% said yes, and 88% said nope, not a bit. And my hypothesis here is that maybe you have more psychology and psychologist followers, and I have more social worker followers.
Can you say more about that? If that's true?
Yeah, sure. So I think,
what do you think that is?
Yeah, so I think as a whole, as I shared, the mental health care field, we're not very good at advocacy for our financial well-being, but in particular, it is built into a lot of the social work ethics that we shouldn't expect to make an income. Because our field is really rooted in this idea of service and community and giving back, there is less likelihood that social workers are openly talking about money, where maybe psychologists are more likely to talk about money because it's, yes, we're still under the same mental health care field umbrella, but the disciplines might be a little bit different in their approach.
Kind of overall, I think there are some kind of cultural difference, pros and cons, as far as kind of what sort of toxic baggage each one tends to carry.
Yes.
So the next question, again for therapists, what area of emotions and finances is the most difficult for you? First of all, there's a ton of responses. There's no way we're reading all the responses. So I kind of put things together in little themes. The biggest theme that came up to this question was fee charging / guilt / earning money equals bad. Maybe I can just read one or two of these to kind of paint the picture. Someone says, I felt guilt for raising my fee and also for charging fees for missed sessions, even though the cancellation policy is in my contract. I'd love more input on this. And somebody else says, charging my worth, not feeling bad or guilty about charging my full rate or a competitive session fee. Someone else says determining the pay I deserve and feeling comfortable holding that limit. I mean, there's some themes here. I'm curious if you have, first of all, any reactions to kind of seeing that be the kind of biggest theme, the most common theme that's coming up in response to this question we asked.
It's not surprising to me. And I think as mental health care professionals, we get the message, yes, from our own field, but also from people outside of our field, that we're doing this because we're nice people versus we're doing this because we're trained professionals. And hopefully, yeah, we're nice too, but we're doing this because we're trained professionals and it is also a career. I think about, again, other healthcare professionals who aren't necessarily wrestling with their income in the same way as mental health care professionals. And I think that anytime therapists are raising their rates or negotiating a raise or charging for things like a canceled fee, there's all of this guilt that comes up that I imagine just is not nearly as strong in other types of healthcare disciplines. And as we know, there is this little thing called social determinants of health, which means that people who are struggling with their mental health are also far more likely to also be struggling in other life domains, such as their employment, housing, income. So I think as therapists, we also understand that their income doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's also a systemic issue, and we want to do whatever we can to make therapy more accessible because we know the transformative power of having a good therapeutic relationship.
Absolutely. There's so many questions connected to this. And I wonder if you have any advice or feedback if we are charging what we feel like we need to charge to make the right salary, that not everyone is going to be able to receive our help. I mean, what do we do
Yeah.
with that?
It's a really hard question, and there are many ways to answer this. I think there are a few things to keep in mind. One is, in order to be a good therapist, we also have to be physically, emotionally, and spiritually resourced in whatever way that means for us. So we need to be getting our sleep, eating our healthy foods, drinking water, spending time with family, friends, loved ones, practicing our version of spiritual nourishment. There are so many different things that we need to be doing, which means we can't be working 60 hours a week and sliding our scale down to nothing. And I also think that we have a tendency to think of accessibility as therapists as only financial accessibility, rather than thinking about the other ways in which we can be accessible to those both in and out of our practice. I think what's really special, Marie, about the work that you do is that you're providing a lot of accessible information to people through things like your YouTube channel and your blog. It is a way for you to be accessible to people who might not be able to afford to work with you. And I like to think of some of my work in the same way, whether it's a YouTube video or a podcast episode that I'm putting out. I like to think that more information that is nuanced and well thought out and balanced can be helpful to those in our community. And while, of course, I'm a proponent that everybody who wants therapy should have access to it, I also think it's worth remembering that not every single person needs or wants one-on-one therapy. And so sometimes doing something like a psychoeducation class locally at your library for free can be a great gift to your community. Accessibility is also doing teletherapy versus in-person therapy, particularly for people who are neurodivergent or who live in rural areas. And then, of course, Marie, as you and I know, having therapists of different backgrounds, religious, race, gender, sexual orientation, immigration status, having different therapists who represent different identities is also a form of accessibility. So we think money is the only way to be accessible, but I think so many therapists are already practicing accessible therapy. They're just not thinking of it in that way.
Yeah, I love how you frame that. All right. So the next kind of big category of responses to this question about what area of emotions and finances is the most difficult for therapists is financial insecurity. Okay, if we had financial security, well, we can give away therapy for free. So it would be a non-issue. So, but financial security is a big concern, as well as like budgeting, student loans, touching on that again. A couple of examples of what people brought up here. Someone says the anxiety that comes when private practice has natural or outside dips in busyness. And sometimes you're busy, and then sometimes everyone kind of graduates from therapy at the same time, but now your paycheck is going to reflect that. Feeling anxious when I don't have plenty of savings. Shame associated with not making enough, or shame associated with struggling to stay on budget or not overspend, fear of scarcity, unpredictable earnings, worrying about having enough money if I transition to private practice. So a lot of financial concerns like, am I going to make enough money basically to live, let alone kind of thrive? I wonder, do you have any feedback or reactions maybe to seeing that this is popping up so much?
My bias here is that I love talking about financial anxiety, and this particular category just is a red sign saying this is financial anxiety. So financial anxiety is feeling nervous, worried, or on edge when it comes to interacting with your money or taking financial action steps that you know you need to take. So for this particular area, I would invite therapists to really think about kind of lovingly acknowledging some of these fears, how many of them are true, how many of them might be kind of twinged with some cognitive distortions. What are things that they have control over, and what are the things that they don't have control over? The reality of student loans being incredibly high and your income being low, what can we do instead? Can you figure out a way to get your repayment plan down? With the recent passage of, some student loan act modifications, the income driven repayment plans are now lower, so you can pay a little bit less towards your student loans. Of course, if they are federal, at the time of this recording, we don't know what's happening with forgiveness, so I can't speak to that right now. But figuring out, is there a way that you can pay less on your student loans while not getting into forbearance or into default? Are there ways that you can dial up the money that you're earning when it comes to budgeting? I always love to look for low-hanging fruit. So when it comes to private practice, are you maybe double paying on a service that you don't really use? For me, with a lot of private practice clinicians, a lot of them are paying for something like a billing service that they don't really realize that their electronic health record, be it Simple Practice or TherapyNotes, has integrated billing software. So a lot of them are paying for a software that does billing, but then they're paying a billing service on top of it. So kind of scanning the money that's going out and asking yourself, are there any services that are duplicates here? Are there anything that maybe I'm overpaying on? Sometimes with financial anxiety, it's really important to compassionately and lovingly carve out some time to take some action steps on the thing that you know you should be doing, whether it's calling to negotiate your credit card payments or your student loan payment, or setting up something like auto pay or canceling a duplicative service.
Yeah. Those are such good tips. Some people are going to be like, oh, I didn't know I could call my credit card and, negotiate something. But a lot of people might know something about that, but since really kind of too scared, like,
Yes.
I don't want to like really talk about it because now I'm really facing this thing that maybe feels like a big problem or overwhelming or whatever it might be. And so then the procrastination happens and then it kind of snowballs but it's okay. Like people can do it and it's going to be better once you do it. It's like with anything that you procrastinate, once you finally do it, you're like, oh,
Yes.
I don't know why I put that off so long. It feels so good.
For sure.
Thank you again, Lindsay, for taking this time, offering such valuable advice. I learned a bunch of stuff. And I'm wondering if you could say more if people are interested in learning more about what you're up to, or if there's anything you got going on that you'd like to share with folks. Like, where can people find you?
And so I have a few fun things going on. So just a reminder, my business is called Mind Money Balance. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on my website. Everything is the same handle, Mind Money Balance. And then as far as fun things that are going on, I have a free quiz that anybody can take to learn a little bit more about their personal financial archetype, to learn both the strengths and the challenges of what might be going on in terms of their relationship with money. That can be found at mindmoneybalance.com/quiz. And another fun thing that I'm testing out this year is an Ask Mind Money Balance segment. So if you have a question that I didn't answer today, or if today's video sparked a curiosity for you, you can go to mindmoneybalance.com/ask to submit your question, and I just might answer it on an upcoming episode.
Awesome. So many good tools, and I'll link to all of those things below. I mean, I'm going to check out that quiz later. It's so good. So feel free to check out Lindsay and all of her amazing resources. Thank you so much, Lindsay.
Thanks for having me, Marie.
Well, thank you so much to Lindsay Bryan-Podvin for offering your time and expertise for this interview. I found it so helpful and refreshing. And thank you to you all for participating in the poll that we put out in order to make this video. We wouldn't be able to make it without you either. So I so appreciate you for offering your time. And as I mentioned, this video is just one of 2 parts to this interview series. If you want to hear more from Lindsay, she offers some really great tools and tips to combat those kind of emotional roadblocks that come with finances in general. So if you'd like to check out that portion of the interview, I've linked to her video below as well. And before we close, I'd like to thank TherapyNotes.com for sponsoring this video. TherapyNotes helps with scheduling, notes, and billing. They have a HIPAA-secure telehealth platform and so much more to keep your practice running smoothly. If you'd like to check out TherapyNotes, you can get 2 months to try it for free without any commitment just by clicking the link in the description of this video. Well, thank you to Lindsay for offering your time. Thank you to you all for participating in the poll both of us put out. And until next time, from one therapist to another, I wish you well.